All right, there we go. We are now recording, so welcome everyone to the, I always have to look at the date. I think it's a January 21st iteration of the MicroProfile live Hangout. If you are on the call, please go to the meeting minutes, which are linked in the chat. Add your name to the contributors list. Optionally add your organization. And it is everybody's shared responsibility to take notes. Right, so please take notes as the call progresses, because sometimes it's hard for me to do that and kind of manage or MC the call itself. The agenda is in the notes. One key note to make, I guess, is that we're going to reserve the last half of this call, 30 minutes of the call, on the working group discussion, which hopefully everyone is up to speed on. And, oh, I forgot to share we'll do that as well. And then we will get started with the agenda. And I guess now is a good time for Amelia to take her picture.
So amazing, you remember, and I didn't have to say anything. Okay, let me do that right now. Everyone who is not in video, should you want to be in video for 1 second? This is your time. Don't be weak. Okay, there. Hola. Okay. Everyone is joining. Look at those smiley faces. Okay. Emily, you have two things. So I imagine you want. Kevin, you are antisocial. I get it. Okay. Everyone smile. Now. Hold on. It didn't work.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, we have, we're trying to reserve the last half, so I'm trying to move things along. So let's see here. All right, so hopefully everyone sees the notes. Edwin, I don't think is going to make it today. Supposedly he is now a father of twins. So congratulations to Edwin.
Wow.
I don't know if he's outnumbered or not. I don't know which child number this is, but Edwin, if you happen to watch the replay, congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, Edwin.
Congratulations, Edwin and family. So beautiful.
Okay.
So two big releases this year.
Yeah, two big releases. That's a good one.
Or three, depending on how you count.
Yeah, I was just wondering if they're backwards compatible or not. I have no idea how to interpret that. Okay. So a heads up, I did create a release plan for MicroProfile 3.3. You can see the date is February 18th. The contents of the release plan is listed here in the release plan notes. As of right now, these are based on the Java EE APIs as opposed to Jakarta. Dependencies, I should say as well. So one, we will talk about this a little bit more for MicroProfile 4.0. So you can see the changes. This is the latest update as of last week. Are there any changes to this list from last week? Okay,
I think
cool.
his REST client is missing.
Did I miss REST?
REST client. I think Andy is on the call. Andy, are you on mute?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, REST client 1.4 should be on there.
I will fix that either during or after the call. So thanks for the heads up.
Good catch, Emily.
Okay. One thing I do as well as I go through and I dig through all the pom.xml, look for dependencies, make sure there's CQs on anything new. So hopefully everyone has created CQs for potentially any new dependencies. So just a reminder.
John,
Mm-hmm.
if I will put a link on this minutes. Basically, Eclipse Foundation changed the way to handle CQ. So no more piggyback CQ is needed. So I put a link here so people can directly look at it. Basically, there's a database, there's a web page. You can just directly type in the third-party libraries. You can see whether it's been approved already or not. You don't need to create any piggyback CQ.
Okay, please do paste that link into the notes. Let's see here. So from a marketing perspective, maybe you'll cover the marketing release, Amelia, but just a heads up on the release date. And anybody else on marketing in the call. Okay, MicroProfile 4.0, which is traditionally, sorry, I see the chat all of a sudden. Here's some chats going on. Okay.
Sorry, John, may I just add to the release plan? You had their open tracing 1.4, I think. But in this issue that I open in the main repo, Paul typed that he's not going to do 1.4 release. So maybe I'm missing something before you publish it.
So maybe did I mix up REST client and open tracing from the last meeting notes?
Better check with Paul, I guess.
I bet you that was it, John.
Okay. Config, health metrics. It says open tracing 1.4 right here with open tracing.
Oh. Yeah, but I think we did discuss it and we said that it wasn't going to be part of the next release.
Yeah, so I think we've switched that it's not an open tracing now, but a REST client.
Okay. So can someone add that to the notes, please?
I think open tracing was about to do a micro release, right? They needed to do that for the dependency that they had with bumping the dependency in Archillion, but I don't think they're doing the minor release until later.
Yeah, it's purely a patch to fix the TCK, so it uses HTTPS for the Maven repo.
Right. Yep.
Okay. I'm hoping someone could add to the release notes to add. Thank you, Anonymous Armadillo. Okay, so MicroProfile 4.0. So we know we need to move to the Jakarta dependencies. Actually, I should probably use the word dependencies instead of APIs. But one question is going to be, I think in the second quarter, Jakarta EE9 is looking to have its release. So one question is there any level of confidence, based on a June release for MicroProfile 4 that we'll have time to consume Jakarta EE9, or should we go with Jakarta EE8?
8.
I thought I would ask that question.
And I would just go into here, 8, because we need the users to be comfortable with MicroProfile Jakarta.
Gotcha.
And we need to create. We need confidence, trust, and we don't have it.
Let's
Fair
hear
enough.
some more people. I heard some other people trying to say some things in there. Go ahead and try again.
Oh, yeah, I was just agreeing with Amelia. I don't think we want to take a chance on having Jakarta E9 ready and usable by the time that we want to do MicroProfile 4.0.
Yeah, maybe the spec and APIs are out, but not much of the implementations.
I think the one counter to that I would have is that unless we're planning on doing something special, it would mean that we wouldn't have a MicroProfile version based on Jakarta EE9 dependencies until June 2021.
Well, the alternative then, that the bullet that John just got rid of, or maybe pushed down. Yeah. So if there's no other breaking changes, then maybe we push the breaking change release out to, what is it, September, October,
Mm-hmm.
the fall release.
Well, I know there are specs with breaking changes. Open API, REST client, possibly metrics. Config is looking to do breaking changes. There's at least 3, make even 4 specs that are looking to do breaking changes for June.
The other suggestion is make this year's release special. Basically, June we do break a change basically for spec to introduce the backward incompatible changes, and in October we rebase Jakarta E9. I think that's a strong argument for exceptions. Maybe we could argue that to be another major release. I think because we set up this rule, I mean, to be to work for us, I think is kind of, we can make some exceptions.
Yeah,
We certainly
but
can. Sorry, go ahead, Rudy.
On the other hand, the MicroProfile 2.0 was also more than a year later than the EE8 release, so that was also a major gap in maybe in that term. So why do we need to follow it by the month now?
Yeah, Rudy, you just echoed my philosophy. What is the rush?
Well,
Because we're talking about support. If we talk about support, and some of us provide support for Jakarta, for Java E8 and products alike, shouldn't we table this to next call and say, based on our recommendations, seeing what clients are purchasing, is this what we need to push? Because I don't see a deadline set by our own hands when we don't have to.
I think we just, so there's a question I'd like to interject that may affect how we come up with an answer, which is, do we feel that we will be able to hit the target on the first release? Or do we want to, given the extremity of the change, do like a milestone round before we go, it's done? You know, I mean, it's a pretty big change, right? And our releases are only 3 months apart. And so, you know, do we need more than 3 months to get this thing accomplished? I mean, like all the specifications had to get updated.
Yeah, I would guess that most people probably have not really evaluated what the impact is going to be to MicroProfile yet. I mean, I know some of us are very active in both, but I think you know, there's a lot of team members that probably really haven't absorbed the impact yet.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
Yes.
I think as the earliest date we release, we could take on Jakarta E9 in October. If not, and then we could make a January release next year to align with Jakarta E9, which is not, I mean, bad thing. I think we have to play, I mean, when the time closer, we have to make a decision when the time closer and then assess the risks and etc.
Yeah, but Emily, you see, we're dependent. If we say Jakarta EE9, that means that Jakarta EE9 is released in June. Those of
well, theoretically, right? So we don't control that.
Well,
exactly. So no, it doesn't make sense.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
I would say that one thing, and that I was going to, and I've talked with John and was going to bring up once MP3.3 was out the way, is the idea of actually disassociating from a Jakarta platform release.
Correct.
And just saying we're using specific dependencies. And
Better.
I know I've seen the plan saying that the dependencies that are part of Jakarta E9 should be released by April or May. So that does give us time before our June release to do things with Jakarta E9 dependencies, even though we're not based on Jakarta E9, if that makes sense.
Plus one can.
Because just from the perspective of, and the reason of wanting to disassociate from the platform is that there will potentially be Jakarta E platform releases where none of the specs we depend on get updated. So like if 10 came out with no changes to anything we depend on, it's no sense for MicroProfile to update to 10 because there's nothing to do. So it's kind of like, I think we need to break that tie and just say that we're depending on CDI 2. Whatever, JaxRS 3.0 or whatever. And then also it does mean that because they can release outside the platform, obviously they're not right now, but in the future. So it could mean that we're able to pick up newer versions of those individual specs before they're even in a platform release if we so chose.
I like the idea of treating Jakarta as we treat any other software and project. We collaborate and we don't cement on one specific software. And
Well,
if we continue to be honest to what we have created in MicroProfile, we should stand by it.
Is that achievable, or are we still really kind of in the ballpark of, you know, we require a minimum version of X, and we do have APIs that use Java X annotations and Java X classes, like config uses, you know.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's kind of where one of my concerns comes in of having too big a gap between Jakarta E9 being out there and us using it, as to whether that means that MP APIs aren't usable with Jakarta E9 because they're going to be different packages for the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, like there's two. I have two thoughts, and they're conflicting. Maybe they're not. I don't know, but I'll spit them out. One is, we know we need to have backwards compatibility tools, basically all of us, and so perhaps the fact that Jakarta E9, that MicroProfile uses Java X APIs isn't such a big deal. But but where that falls apart is that story isn't necessarily allowing you. It allows you to run an already compiled app on a changed VM, you know, a changed namespace. But having two of them in the IDE at the same time and trying to compile that is still not like a solved challenge. So, you know, if I have my IDE open and it's using all the Jakarta versions of CDI, and then I go to load my MicroProfile config in there and it's using JavaX version of CDI, I can't compile that app without some issues. Then the second factor is, and I guess really holding on what Kevin said, is that I suspect we haven't looked at this enough to know what the actual deadline date should be for finishing, but maybe it's more important that we agree to start at the same time. Like basically, we're going to get done with our release in June, and you know, MicroProfile release in June, and the Jakarta E9 release comes out theoretically in June. Seems like it's a no-brainer that we have to start all working on this problem at that time.
Benio, where do you get the June? We
All
are
right.
getting the release on February.
February. Well, don't we have another release coming out in June?
It's
MicroProfile.
yes.
Right. There's the MicroProfile release in June where we want to make some backwards incompatible changes. Is that correct?
Right. for Jakarta EE8.
Right. And when we get that released, it seems like a no-brainer that we all pretty much have to start working on making sure MicroProfile can run on the Jakarta namespace. And the logical time for that work to start is June, because that's when we're done with the MicroProfile release and the Jakarta 9 release is done.
And then we do what Ken said about softly acquiring Jakarta 9 without choosing and picking what we believe is necessary for MicroProfile extensions.
Sorry, I got to do a timeout here. Clock management going into my, you know, sorry, I got to be the bad guy. This is a discussion we have to have. Normally, I kind of start these discussions in the Google group. Can someone else start this discussion in the Google group? Because the last one, no one hardly responded to me. So maybe someone else will have better luck. So if someone could start a discussion in the Google group on MicroProfile 4.05, you know, 4.0.next and Jakarta EE namespace kind of topic, that would be awesome.
Don't throw the ball. Just can you own that? Or Kevin, can you own that task?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, just start the discussion. So someone add the action to Oh, Ken's probably doing it already. I see him typing and looking, so he might be doing it already, which is awesome. So let's see. We got marketing. We got MISC to cover in 9 minutes. So can we get kind of a brief update on marketing, Amelia? We skipped it last week, so let's see if we can.
Yeah. So really quickly, congratulations to Martin and Rudy for being a part of the 4th MicroProfile onboarding interview. The message was sent to the forum. That is the only, I think, one of the most important updates. This is the 4th interview of this activity. And if you have anything to say, the two of you, please say it here. Otherwise,
you muted yourself.
I said, Martin and Rudy, if you have anything to share about your experience really quickly here, go for it. I think everything else is being typed out here in the space.
I will leave this to Rudy probably. I just answered the questions.
Yeah, and I just made them up, so my task was faster than Martin's one. But yeah, okay, I can see that it can be useful to attract some people to see how you can start with it. So if there are 2 other people that are interested in doing it, go ahead.
Well, Rudy, you
Okay.
are the next interviewee, so you find someone that interview you.
All right.
Yeah, but I'm
sorry.
I'm not a new one, so
No matter.
Clock management again.
yep. Next topic.
So thanks for doing the interviews. Thank you very much, and thanks for the updates. Let's see if we can go on to a couple of MicroProfile starter updates. Cesar?
Sorry, I was muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes. So we're aiming to GA the starter by the end of this week. As you know, the starter has been running in beta mode for a few months, and last time we checked, I think it was yesterday, there's been it's probably the count is a little higher now, but 12,150 project creations through it, using it since in this beta time. So we're hoping to launch a GA by the end of this week. Debbie and Rudy from Pyara. I know Debbie's putting together a short blog post for the announcement of the GA. So
the site is officially already there since this.
Yeah, but don't
my
say
time,
that.
so
Don't
it's
say
about...
that too loud. Yeah, the bit's already out there, but yeah, we need to. The official announcement will probably go out by the end of this week. So as far as DevNexus, which is the next conference where MicroProfile will be present in mass, Debbie from Pyara has been promoting all the talks and also a generic, not generic, but an event social card via Twitter using the MicroProfile handle. And I understand is she online, by the way, Debbie? No? Okay. I believe she's promoting it once a week, the talks, and then the week before the event, she's going to do it more often. And then the day of the talks, she's going to promote the talks an hour before each happens. Next thing is about the IDE plugins for the starter. The VS Code is already available. The plugin for the MicroProfile starter, IntelliJ one is already available. Eclipse J is available. Well, it's not available. It's ready, but it's not available online yet until the online site is refreshed for J. And the last thing I wanted to mention was there is an interest from folks from IBM in working on a MicroProfile language server. And out of that interest, I learned myself that there's already one that has been created by Red Hat. And so there's that collaboration. It's starting between folks from IBM and Red Hat. Everyone is welcome, please, to collaborate on that. Because right now I think that language server is included with the Quarkus one. So I think the collaboration is based on trying to have one just for MicroProfile. So that's all I had. Thank you.
So, Cesar, do you mean the extension pack? Do you mean?
No, that's something else. Yeah.
Okay,
You want to say a few words about that? Actually, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So the other.
Sorry,
thing
I'm
is,
going to interject here. Let's see if we can keep it to like a 30-second update because we literally
yeah.
have some other topics.
Okay. So basically, we are working with Microsoft for the VS extension pack, similar to Spring Boot. So it's for our MicroProfile. That's all.
Right. So and one quick comment, and then we'll stop. Is we are trying to list in that extension pack all of the available tooling that exists in the market. So if you are a vendor, if you know of any vendor that has any tooling for MicroProfile, we'd love to add it on that extension page. So please let us know. Thank you.
Awesome. I think, Ken, do you think we have time to discuss because I think we skipped this topic last week, the JDK 11 starter discussion. Did you want to do that now or do that online? Given the time we have?
It was more to raise it because I know there's been an offline discussion where there wasn't really general agreement as to how to go other than a couple of people that have already been involved with the starter. Because I know like Kevin in the past wasn't too sure about having a JDK on the starter page. I know I'm not too sure about it, but I think it's gone through anyway. So it's just to raise that as to whether there's a concern there or what.
What would be the disadvantage?
Well, right now it's kind of an extra thing to keep up to date in terms of we've got all the implementation and what versions they support of MicroProfile. Now it's also which of those versions of MP implementation support which JDKs, which is not something we've tracked to date. It's also a case of kind of excluding specification implementations if they don't support newer JDKs. Then it's a question of also which JDKs support. Is it just the LTS ones? Is it all of them? Because obviously some people will want to play with non-LTS. So it's kind of like a Pandora's box of proliferation of options and confusion in the starter, I guess.
So the starter attempts to alleviate or ameliorate the confusion by narrowing down the pop-down lists as you select things. So if we were to add Java 11, which there is a thread in the community already with discussion going on about the whether we should allow surface that on the starter or not. The whole point of the starter is to make it easier for a developer to use and get sample code for MicroProfile. Now, this has been part of the discussion. I mean, if there are pros of showing Java 11 in the sense that and the idea would be just to surface or show just the LTS releases, not every single release in between the LTSs. And the reason behind it is that if we just stick with Java 8, most folks are already trying out Java 11. Developers are trying it, and we want to basically offer that option for developers to make it easier to test and run the sample code using Java 11. So I don't know. I mean, there's been pros and cons to adding or not to Java 11 in the discussion thread. Not sure we want to discuss this on this forum because it could be we probably need a couple of beers.
I like that, Cesar.
But I'm as you can tell by my opinion, I think it would be useful for developers to have the option to generate or to at least select Java 11 so that they don't have to edit the pump file and make changes to it before they can just run the maven commit.
Yeah, to add one more point is like at the conference, one person say, "Oh, your micro profile starter is so auto date, still stuck with Java 8." And then he said, "Oh, I tried to upgrade to Java 11, found out this is one it chooses the one server it doesn't work." Is like no easy way for him to know which app server support Java 11 and etc. So which is the other like a good way to make the starter appealing to more people, more developers, so that they can use Java 11.
One more comment. Earlier, you guys were talking about removing the dependency for the platform. So if and when that happens, then obviously that would affect the starter. Because if there's no dependency for Java 8 or Java 11, and we go directly to the Java EE libraries, then that would obviously we have to modify the starter to account for that change.
Okay, I'm gonna insert here, clock management guy. We're now eating into the working group discussion time. So let's continue this discussion in the Google group thread that's out there. I will, and I really hate to do this, Rudy, because you have a couple items. If there's something you want to say, can you like fit it within 60 seconds or something like that?
Yes, just to move forward the JDK 11 support, because we have now already 4 vendors which support it on JDK 11. My proposal there was to move something forward in the next breaking change, but we can do it next time.
Okay. Thanks, Rudy. All right, moving on to the working group discussion. I posted a link or a new thread in the group, and nobody really responded to the request that, okay, how do we want to break this discussion up and maybe into chunks, and what topics and how do we want to discuss it? And I didn't really get any responses to that question. You know, there were a couple of posts in general, but nothing that really answered that question. So the question then becomes, what's the best way to have this discussion? Is there something that we can do, like maybe up front, that makes having the discussion of the various other things a little bit simpler? You know, any thoughts about how we want to maybe have the discussion?
Hi, this is Leonardo. Sorry to interrupt. I am Leonardo Lima. I work with V2Com, but I'm not representing V2Com or anyone else but me as a Java developer. I've been on the JCP BC board, and I've been to the beginning of MicroProfile and all these efforts. I saw in the email threads on the MicroProfile archives that Squad Stark had mentioned 2 really important questions that I didn't see anyone responding, and I think that could be the root of the discussion. And I'm gonna read them. What it means for EE and MP to be online technically, and whether those are arguing for a single working group or arguing for a single set of EE specs. I've read a lot of the discussions that you guys are going back and forth on this, and I've heard the previous call as well. And my perspective is that it's really confusing, especially from people from outside like me that are consumers of the technology. And this is really sending out confusing messages about if this is a technology problem or it is just a bureaucracy problem, as in the working group, the bureaucracy that takes care of that. And I'm sorry, my baby is cooing on the back here.
Leo,
Yeah,
so cute, so cute.
Yeah, that's baby number 3. Yeah. So my point is, I think Scott is right on point there, because if there is a confusion on what you're trying to achieve with a dual or single working group, I think that's that is key. And people I think are mixing up. I did it in the beginning, like I said, well, the working groups are necessarily different because they are technically different. So the MicroProfile is supposed to be independent of Java EE or Jakarta EE, regardless if now it uses Jakarta EE. So it could evolve into something totally different. And 2 working groups could be done with that. And then I met Ivar on CodeMash this January, and he pointed me to these other aspects. And I said, well, now I see that there may be another point of view. As in, one thing is for the working group is the steering committee and the people supporting this, not only just technically. And I think Scott mentions that, well, maybe people are mixing these points up. So maybe if we can clear the technical aspect, we can clear this working group as well. Or maybe try to define, well, remember guys, this is not technical at all, because technically it's still possible to be aligned even if you have 2 separate working groups. So that is my suggestion on how to handle the discussion. I'll stop now because baby is loud.
So first of all, thank you very much for joining the call. Really good feedback. And I think you and Edwin need to create a new subcommittee within MicroProfile, you know, children supporting MicroProfile. Awesome. So thank you for joining, especially, it sounds like it's family time. So does anyone else, does anyone want to comment on that or add another?
Well, I would just comment that I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there, Leo, that the problem I've seen in all the threads on the working group is that there is the concept of how the project is managed at Eclipse and how MicroProfile and Jakarta interact from a technical specification perspective is just being mashed into, oh, it's the same issue. And they're 2 very different things. And I think as Scott pointed out in one of his posts, that even if we have a single working group that MicroProfile and Jakarta are under, that doesn't then automatically mean the specs are working together and all this kind of stuff. That's a whole separate issue that needs to be figured out once we've got this working group issue out of the way. So I think that's the big issue, is the 2 are being thrown together and they're actually very separate things.
Yep, totally agree, Ken. And Leo?
The question is, which order do we do them in?
I think
and I'll try to answer that, David. I think the technical aspect is most important to us developers, and I think the working group is most important to you vendors, as in the guys who actually contribute and sell support and sell products based on this. So for me, as a developer, I've been trying a lot to understand, should I be relying only on MicroProfile and I use both because everyone supports both, or it doesn't matter now, or just go with the flow and be ready to break whenever I want to break. So that is a pending discussion that I see a lot of people having when I discuss Java EE and Jakarta EE technically with them. And then I know that you vendors are, and I saw David's post on why the JCP failed and why not. After 15 years, it worked really well, and then 5 years in the past, this recent past, it kind of broke. I think the problems, I'm not going to dwell here into the problems of JCP or in Jakarta EE, but I think regardless of the choice of 1 or 2 working groups, the major problems, which were cost and IP flow, could really just be settled with either proposals. From what I read on the threads, like you can make the structure 0 cost, and maybe not, and there's a cost problem, and the IP flow is already. Why couldn't the GCP be fixed? Because Arco had a standpoint there, and the JSPA was something that no one wanted to touch, and we tried it. That's what I learned from being on the JCPC. So I think if you guys want to, the community at large, like developers and people that are just wanting to contribute or maybe do a single commit or learn more, you have to do the alignment first. And if you think that for doing the work you guys do as a vendors, which I totally love, of course, if you want to continue that and if you need to have that cleared out before doing more commitments, then I would say, well, so figure out the working groups first and then tell people, yes, it's confusing. We know it's confusing. We're working with the Jakarta people guys to also make it work. But I think that's what my point is, who are trying to please now? And there are two different people and 2 different desires.
So that wasn't really a recommendation, was it?
I'm sorry, yeah. You guys can discuss now.
Leo, the vestido is so cool. You read or listened to the video. Amazing. I love it.
Oh yeah, I spent 3 hours studying this before, and I spoke 2 hours with Evar on the code.
Well, do other people have thoughts? On
I think I come from a non-vendor, non-commuter standpoint. I come from a guy that really loves Java and Bash JavaScript as much as possible. That I don't want Angular and React and all this bullshit, the technology going into the enterprise world, because I don't think they're scalable. And I think that if we fragment it even more with Spring and now other technologies coming up, because this single or dual working group and from the two major Java EE forces, it sends mixed messages. I got mixed messages. So now Red Hat has Jakarta EE stuff, MicroProfile stuff, and Quarkus, which is kind of both, but not them all at the same time. So that's my confusion. And I kind of like to think myself as enlightened in the Java world. So if I'm confused, other guys could be confused as well. So I would love to see the technical aspect solved first, because that started in the beginning of the MicroProfile stuff. Oh, wow, you're going to be different. And Mark Little posted again his link to his 2016 blog post about how, when what MicroProfile is supposed to be. And if it's going to be like that, it's totally super fine. It's just settle this down technically, and then you guys are going to be much easier to have it solved work group perfectly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's based on, hey, Leo. So based on what you said, I think we should, previously, when we talk about a working groups discussion, and then we didn't dwell on the technical aspect, alignment, etc. I think it does make sense to discuss the technical aspect, like the real relationship between MicroProfile and Jakarta EE, and that will potentially that will influence the work group kind of decision as well. I think more and more developers, will jump in to share their opinions on the technical aspect.
I guess from my perspective, I would say that yes, the technical stuff is important, but in terms of trying to get that sorted now, I fear that could lead into an even longer discussion as to how that's going to work. Plus also the fact that, to my understanding, nothing can be done until MicroProfile has that IP patent flow anyway. So MicroProfile needs to be in a working group to have any kind of technical collaboration with Jakarta. So I'm not sure what we can decide technically without the working group in place.
Yeah,
I think the decision would be a vision.
I think
like a vision, like an ideal. Not code, not anything specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I'm thinking more about maybe processes will be a part of that vision, and it doesn't have to be detailed processes, right? It's like this is how they might plan to work together, kind of stuff. Technically.
So to your point, Ken, where nothing can actually be executed in terms of putting IP or exchanging IP until there's a specification process in place. The argument could be made that we know that is the one absolute constant, because all roads have to lead to us adopting the specification process. So it is probably the least blocking of the concerns, because it's the one constant, and most other things are variables.
It's the one thing driving this requirement for a working group in the first place.
Right. And well, so what I guess maybe to Leo's point, well, one, as far as the way we've run ourselves, we've always run ourselves prioritizing committers over companies. And in that regard, perhaps dealing with things technically first is in the spirit of the community. And if we can get some things, and I really echo the concerns that could take a very long time. But if we don't come to agreement in that regard, then nothing else matters, truly.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other thing is we set up this work group, and eventually you find out is from technical aspect we haven't done well, and we will make. I think the setting up a work group doesn't do us any better. So I think at least we should start the technical aspect conversation. We shouldn't say, okay, before this work group decision has been made, we are not allowed to talk about technical aspect. I think the technical aspect has a great influence towards the work group. Anyway, work group, whatever option A or option B is chosen, that will fix the IP issue. Anyway, now we need to decide which option we are going to choose.
And I'd like to also go back to David's post about the JCP. And I think you guys from the MicroProfile have an option and an opportunity actually to reinvent yourselves and receive the 2015 and 2016 vision still holds. As in, you got started all because the status quo was one and now it is different. So
yeah, we had some of that conversation last time. Yeah, you cut up there. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so because the status quo is changed a lot since you guys made a decision to do the MicroProfile, I think you guys should say, well, if we want to continue with the same vision, independence, and probable be totally independent, as in we are going to define a new CDI spec. Not that you're going to do that, but pretend that you are. And then they have nothing to do with the Jakarta E, sorry. And then, okay, and that with that technical vision, you're going to say, how do we achieve the technical vision with most ease, or with one working group or with two working groups? And again, I don't know anything about Eclipse processes. I know that I took a long time to understand the JCP processes, but it seems that any technical direction you want to achieve can be achieved with both options. And then I'm, as a developer, trying to understand all this and say, well, what is this about? Is it cost? Is IP flow? What is it? And I really don't know. And then you guys can, but I think it's going to be clear that with a technical vision in one way, and then, okay, what we want to achieve is not possible with these aspects because of these, this, and that, then it's going to be easier to either to explain to others and to move your point across the room and say, well, this is why we should go into that direction, because technically we want to do this and we cannot, or we have to have this in place to achieve that technical vision.
So Leo, this is amazing. I like that you're bringing questions. Can you mute yourself? So you read the thread and it's so amazing. The confusion goes into MicroProfile was created to be light. There are no headcounts higher under the Eclipse. We don't want to base a working group based on the Jakarta project. Let me finish this. The thing is that these calls are open. So the working group that we are going to create together is going to continue to have these calls to be open. There is no buying. There shouldn't be a buying a seat and a vote to have a say. We need to protect. There are some core values that we want to protect as MicroProfile goes into completion to year 4, right? So that is like one of the situations here. And that is why working group under the PR was created by a few people in this group. And then there is no versus. It's just some things that are not equivalent to what currently is under the only working group that is paid for play.
So to get to Leo's point, we did try to address some of this last time, but we didn't necessarily get a lot of discussion because I talked way too long. So
that is true. I'm sorry, I'm pulling a David today.
Let me try and tee it up for other people. I'll quickly state my technical interest, and I would love to hear from everybody, and I'll be super fast. in the JVM language world, we have things like Kotlin and Scala and Groovy, and they experiment and they find things. Sometimes they make mistakes, and sometimes they have successes, and those get absorbed into Java. And after several years of working in standards, it became obvious we always needed a place to experiment at rapid breakneck pace and take the gems and move them into something that's kind of like more stable long-term. Create our CMPs in a side community and then graduate the good stuff into the main community. So for me, that's what's interesting technically about MicroProfile. And then in terms of the way we run things, it's interesting to me because we run it as an open source project, and it's kind of the opposite of the way we do things.
Sorry, I have to interrupt because I can't mute Philip. It looks like his screen is frozen too. You are actually unmuted, Philip. We hear lots of background noise. I don't know if he hears us right now. All right, sorry, David. Yeah, I can't mute him. So, David.
Okay. But I was done, right? So,
okay.
Do other people? What do other people feel about MicroProfile technically? Do you see it as a place where we can experiment, reinvent, get things wrong, reinvent them till they're right, and then maybe graduate that stuff into a stable place? Is that valuable to you? Would you see that the same? Well,
I think yes and no. Of course, we need to experiment. We need to try out. But as we come to a point where we have a lot of people using the stuff that we have created, then throwing it away and start over again is not an option, if you ask me. The same for moving things to, as you say, to a stable thing. If that means changing the package names, artifacts, etc., then that is not an option.
Other thoughts?
Let me throw Martin under the bus. He just sent, he did a research for his master's on MicroProfile. Martin, can you speak up here and tell us as a coder what you find about coding for on MicroProfile?
I'm not sure that I understand the question.
Do you have any thoughts on David's question about the flexibility to do things, to try a step, to fail as a coder in MicroProfile and test things and bring things to change?
Well, me personally, definitely, I like that we can test out things and we can break them, but I haven't actually contributed to Jakarta previously. I was just using the implementations.
This is not about Jakarta, this is about MicroProfile.
Let him talk.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say that I don't have these strong needs for backward compatibility as such. So I don't see that big of an issue to rewrite the whole application if we are targeting microservices, which shouldn't be big applications at all. So I like that MicroProfile is as free as it is and that we can try out things and that we can fail because it's part of the process.
Other thoughts? Emily, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so for me, I think I have been talking to a lot of people, a lot of end user have been spoke to. They use both Jakarta EE and MicroProfile. So, and the other thing, the MicroProfile is based on Jakarta EE, CDI, JAX-S, and etc. I do not foresee MicroProfile will throw away CDI, create their own context dependency injection. I think that root is going to be there and will stay there. So we do not stay free from Jakarta EE. This is one thing. The other thing is that why should we should utilize the best base and just build a castle on the top. I think that kind of promote MicroProfile more and utilize Jakarta EE and promote the ecosystem.
So I'm going to challenge one thing you mentioned, Emily, and that is that because we use CDI, we're dependent on the Jakarta EE ecosystem. And so I want to narrow that down. MicroProfile is dependent on CDI, right? It's dependent on about 5 specs, which does not necessarily mean that MicroProfile is dependent on Jakarta EE, right? Which is a culmination of, I don't know what the final count is. And Java EE was like 34 specs, right? So what that means is there can be implementations like Quarkus, like Helidon, that don't support Jakarta EE specifically, as defined by the platform spec, but it does utilize some of the specs to create runtimes, right? So I want to make sure there's a very clear distinction about, the MicroProfile doesn't rely on Jakarta EE. It relies on a certain collection of specifications that's a very small subset of Jakarta EE.
Yeah. I'm not trying to say that you use the full set of Jakarta EE. I have not seen anybody to need to use a full set of Jakarta EE plus MicroProfile. So we use some part of the Jakarta EE. So Jakarta EE doesn't mean the whole collection of the Jakarta EE, just some components of the Jakarta EE. So, but that's enough to establish a relationship. So we have been, my personally, I think also Adam Bin, presented in many conferences, the MicroProfile plus Jakarta EE. I think he always talk about MicroProfile together with Jakarta EE.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, I'm not advocating that MicroProfile breaks compatibility with Jakarta either, right? So it's obvious. Even Wildfly, right? Being a Red Hatter, is going to support MicroProfile. So we do want to maintain that compatibility, but we also want to enable new runtimes that don't necessarily intend to support the full platform to come about and grow the Java ecosystem in that way as well.
Yeah, I don't see. Sorry. I don't see any problem like when we say Jakarta EE plus MicroProfile. I don't think it's the whole set of the Jakarta EE. I think it's absolutely fine. People like Quarkus and Helidon and etc. is support MicroProfile, and also they support some components of Jakarta EE. That's absolutely fine. I don't have any problem with that. I think when people talk about Jakarta EE, it never occurred to me they mean the whole collection of Jakarta EE. To be honest, it's very rare anybody need to use every single component of Jakarta EE.
We do need to make a decision on how we're going to continue the conversation over the course of the time.
Yeah, we got 1 minute left. Time got away from me as the timekeeper. Sorry.
Do we want to focus on technical?
I suggest, this is my personal view. I think also,
by the way, that's a really important question because we have to make progress. So
I think a technical view, we should talk about it.
Next week we have the one-off call already scheduled. It's 1 hour, 11 in the morning to 12 PBT. What is everyone else thinking? Technical?
I'm fine with that.
For that call.
For at least one call.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm not sure. When was the architecture call this month?
It was decided, I think, that it was going to be skipped this month via the thread that John has started.
Oh, okay. I missed that.
Yeah, don't worry.
Okay.
Don't worry. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, either have the discussion asynchronously or reschedule it to a different time. I don't know. Ken, you're also involved in the architecture call. What do you think?
Yeah, I just deleted the meeting.
Okay.
We can do everything async. That's what open source is. In terms of the technical stuff for next week, my one question would be, can we have that discussion without having a whole bunch of Jakarta people on the call as well? Because otherwise then isn't it us just saying what we'd like to see, which isn't going to get necessarily agreed by both sides anyway?
Mm-hmm. So we have a few people in the Jakarta steering specification here. An email, they need to send an email or agree to send an email to those forums and to the community, Jakarta community forum, and saying, hey, This call is going to be technical. Should you be interested in pulling your
No.
weight, providing feedback, join. No special treatment. This is public and it's not going to be private.
So here's, I want to be careful. We have to provide some kind of structure for the conversation. So it's not necessarily a technical call in that how, the details of exactly how we're going to resolve some of these technical alignment things, but we do want to have the discussion about, like I said, like we discussed earlier, right? Whether it's process-based, however, right? It's something that's not necessarily package named, right? Down to that level of technical detail. So we need to work on a structure to have that conversation. Otherwise, it's going to be all over the place. So we can start that just in a Google Doc. Maybe that's shared between the two, and just figure out. It's like, what are the things that we need to discuss? Prioritize them.
John, why don't we add it to the PRs? Like we start a thread and do it this, do that conversation via PRs. We have already some bugs.
Personally, I think PRs are too hard to follow. It's such a long threaded conversation.
And non-Git people don't get it much. Like.
Okay.
Yeah, I read 0 PRs. I read all the mailing list and Google Docs. So.
All right. Okay. Drive. Document.
I'm a boomer. I cannot. Sorry.
You're not a boomer.
You're younger
I
than me.
define myself as a boomer. I'm sorry.
You are younger than me, Leo.
That's a specific age group. So
okay.
So my point is, I agree what he said. I think sharing a Google Doc would be great. I would add some words there. I think we can start by revisiting the original mission of MicroProfile and how that aligned with Java EE at the time, and how we're going to do that in the 2020 timeframe. And that would be a very good technical decision. And starting that from there, I think the framework could be added. I think people key to the development of the first MicroProfile would be very helpful to get us working, even like the ball movie and all that. So.
Okay, so Leo, so this is John, you have, I think, volunteered to create a document, and we will help you. And then I volunteer myself to send the link to that document with that thread to the Jakarta Community Forum. I do not believe in linking both in that message to the communities. The MicroProfile has 1,200 close to, and the community on Jakarta has 815 or something. So it's not a good idea to mix and match, but reaching out is easier. It takes me 1 sentence, and I am ready. I am happy to own it. I can help on that.
Just a note, I'm speaking next week at a Sonatype event on Tuesday, so I don't know what time my speaking slot is, and it may not allow me to join.
Yeah.
Thanks for the heads up. Okay, so we're 4 minutes over because I didn't do my duties very well today, so I apologize to everybody. So I'll create that doc, and thanks everyone for joining. Same bat time, same bat channel next week. See you all then.
Traveling next week, you guys, but we try to make
See
it.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.